Hello, Bedford. My name is Sue Mullen, and I'm today's host for Candidates Corner. With me this afternoon is Lisa Nash, who is a candidate for District 41 State Representative. A little more information on that later. But first, I want to welcome you, Lisa, to Candidates Corner.
Thank you, Sue.
Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks.
Lisa and I actually know each other, but I'm going to ask you some background information because I'm sure I'm not the only one in Bedford that feels like she knows Lisa Nash, but we'll be surprised to find out some things about Lisa Nash that she didn't know.
Okay, great.
So tell me a little bit, Lisa, about where you grew up.
Okay, I actually grew up in a small town in Rochester, Massachusetts, very similar actually to Amherst and Bedford. It's an agricultural community. There's a lot of farms, corn, cranberry bogs, if you're familiar with southeastern Massachusetts, no street lights.
So the New Bedford sort of part of town?
Yeah, actually,
right
near New Bedford. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So, you could ride your bike everywhere. It was a great place to grow up.
Americana.
Americana.
All right, very good. And your family, you weren't living in Rochester, Massachusetts by yourself. Tell me about your folks.
Okay, sure. So I'm actually an Army brat. I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, so moved around a lot growing up, every 18 to 24 months, moving on to a different place.
So when you say you're from Rochester, New York, how long did you actually live in Rochester, New York?
Massachusetts.
Sorry?
Rochester, Massachusetts.
Rochester, Massachusetts. How long were you there for?
We moved there when I was 10. I was going into the 5th grade.
Okay.
So when my father finished his military career, he got a job at a Acushnet company in a small town of Acushnet. It's right near Rochester. So we moved the family to Rochester, and it was great because my brother was in junior high and I was in 5th grade, and that really allowed us to stay in one place through high school and kind of put down some roots. So I would say that's where I was raised.
Okay, so it's interesting to me that when I said, where are you from, you really spoke about where your heart is from, not where you were born.
Right.
And your dad retired after how many years in the military?
He was in for 13. He was in the Vietnam War. We actually traveled. We lived overseas, so it was a good career.
And after the military?
So after the military is when he got that job in Acushnet. So he was an executive at Acushnet Company. A lot of people know Titleist, FootJoy worldwide. So Acushnet Holdings is part of that. So I actually had a summer job winding golf balls, which was
no kidding.
Third shift in the factory. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, I would have been very interested in discount golf balls. Very interested. How about brothers and sisters?
So I have one brother. He's 3.5 years older than I am. He was in the Navy. So I'm happy to say a couple of years ago, he moved back to the East Coast. He was stationed in Virginia Beach. And then his wife is from Chicago, where they met when they went to school out at Northwestern. So they are now back in Rhode Island. So they're 2 hours away, and I get to see my nieces and nephews and do all that fun auntie stuff. So it's really great. So it's just the two of us, a small kind of middle class, normal family.
And your folks, are they still with us?
Yes, my folks are still here. My mom lives in Philadelphia. My dad is down the Cape.
So, all right, so close enough that everybody really is within striking
driving distance.
Yep, great. How'd you end up in Bedford?
So my husband and I met. I was taking classes at UMass Dartmouth, and he was working at a small incubator business, and so that's how we met. And he got a job in Andover, Massachusetts, and so we were young and poor, and so we kind of took a pencil and drew a radius around Andover, and where can we afford to live that's within shooting distance of Andover. And my husband's originally from Alaska, and I think we both were looking for something a little less urban. We're outdoorsmen, so we wanted to be a little bit closer to the mountains and hiking and camping. So that's how we ended up in
Alaska.
Bedford.
How did he end up here?
Well, he went to school, out here.
Okay.
And
all right, and the rest became history, as they say?
The rest became history.
What about your family now?
Well, so Jay and I have been married for 23 years. It's kind of crazy to say that, but we have 4 teenagers. 3 boys and a girl. It was really
Okay, that in and of itself, just the phrase 4 teenagers.
4 teenagers.
4 teenagers.
4 teenagers, yeah.
And their ages?
So 19, 17, 16, and 15. All 4 of them were at Bedford High School last year, which was really kind of cool. A lot of people look at me in shock and say, oh my gosh, how is that possible? But it was great having all 4 of them in the building together. They all ran on the same cross-country team for a season, and it's really great. Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't read about that in the Bedford Bulletin, actually, the idea of 4 siblings running on the cross-country team at the same time.
Yeah.
Dare I ask you whether or not it was more exhausting to have 4 toddlers or 4 teens?
More exhausting to have 4 teens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in the thick of it.
We're in the thick of it. They're all going, they're very independent and they're going off in their different directions. And, this is just a really pivotal kind of moment, when they're teenagers of, making really big decisions. And, even small decisions can be, have a real impact. So, yeah.
How do they feel about their mom being a budding politician?
They think I'm a little crazy.
They're probably not the only ones that think you're crazy for doing this.
But I've actually volunteered for a lot of years in the school, so they're really used to me being civically engaged. I've been involved. I created the Kid Vote, and so I don't. It's not that weird for them. Yeah.
Lisa, I know something certainly about your passion as a volunteer, because you and I actually came to know one another initially because of that very Kid Vote that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I was super excited to see that it was happening annually, but realized pretty quickly that some years it was a one-person event. It was Lisa Nash and the Kids Vote. So clearly that struck a chord in you as well, the idea of modeling good citizenship and democracy in action, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's an interesting story how it came about. If you've seen me at the polls, especially when my kids were younger, I'd be walking and it's like the little ducklings, and we'd all march in and squeeze into the little voting booth. And then, years ago, they would have these sample ballots that kids could vote on, but it was basically the adult ballot. The kids
Handed
don't
to
know.
a kid,
yeah,
right.
they don't know who the candidates are or what the issues were. And my second son was in 4th grade, and so I'm taking him like, okay, you guys have to vote. And he said, why? Why am I voting? This doesn't mean anything to me. Nobody knows, nobody cares if I'm supporting the presidential candidate or which one. So that really got me thinking, how can we model this kind of civic engagement for our kids and give them some skin in the game, something that they care about. And yes, it's really near and dear to me watching these kids come in, and we have little kindergartners and preschoolers come in. They look forward every year to coming in and getting their I voted sticker. And it's just been a really great experience.
And the issues generally relate to whatever the age the student is. So there's a 1st grade question and a 5th grade question or something like that?
Yep. So we actually work with the student councils in the schools that have student councils. We work with the administration. They come up with something that's going on in their school that's relevant to their students. At the younger ages, it's sometimes really low stakes. It can be as simple as, do you want an extra recess, or sort of activities, or naming the school mascot was another one that the elementary schools did.
Yep.
Lurgio has had dress code questions and cell phones during lunch questions. And so it is things that the students care about, and they want to come in and vote. They want their voices.
Fanning those passions early.
Yeah. And then the hope is as they become teenagers and they turn 18, that voting is just going to be, it's just something that you do. They're used to doing it. So that's my hope.
I also know that you have been instrumental in other organizations as well. I know that Taxpayers for Quality Education was something that you were very active in at a certain point.
Yep.
I know that you have been parent-teacher group president.
A few times, a few different times.
On more than one occasion. So how do you think that these volunteer positions in our community have helped sort of shape your skill set for state government?
Well, I think all of these organizations that I've been a part of really are about people. I mean, when it comes right down to it, is advocating for people and working with a diverse set of needs, especially in the schools. Bedford has 6 schools, and so they all have a different kind of culture and a different personality. They have different needs, and they know. For the parent-teacher group, you're representing thousands of parents, right? And you don't ask them, are you Democrat or Republican? It's very nonpartisan
Right.
kind of approach to things. But you also are dealing with budgets and policies and engagement and involvement, educating on issues.
Yep.
So I think it's obviously a much smaller scale, but it's very similar, I think, to what I would be doing in Concord, which is advocating for people, educating them on the issues, finding
Right.
out where they stand, and letting their voices be heard. So I think it plays very well into a state representative position.
Tell me a little bit about your stance on some of the issues that you've chosen to sort of build a platform on. I know that public education is one of them.
Yep.
Do you want to speak to that a little bit, or do you feel that you've shed enough light on public education? Because I've got some other things I'd like to talk to you about too.
Public education, obviously, for the last 12 years, I've been very involved in public education, and so that's something that I'm passionate about. I was raised in a public education system. My husband went through public schools. His teachers are public educators. My kids have gone through the public education system. And so that's something that I'm passionate about, and making sure that we are providing the skills and the skill sets and the abilities that our students need to go off and be successful, whether that's in a 2-year school or a 4-year school, or
Right.
whether it's going into an internship. We need to make sure that we are creating these opportunities for all students.
And preparing them to do something beyond their educating years. Yep. In addition to public education, and I'm going to admit that I peeked at your website, which is where I mined for some of this. You mention sustainability and a healthy environment. What kinds of things are you thinking about?
Well, a couple of things that come to my mind kind of right off the bat is, we had the St. Gobain water crisis, right? The pollution in the groundwater. And so what I saw after that was a group of families and parents coming together and advocating for these healthy environments. And I think it's really important that not only to address these kind of problems when they happen, but to put legislation in place that prevents this kind of thing from happening, right? Because it's very expensive to go back and, St. Gobain has spent $14 million trying to fix this problem. But in the meantime, we have, kids with health issues that we're not sure are connected. And so I just think it's really important that when we're legislating, we're looking forward, and trying to prevent. Cell towers is another thing in our town that a group of parents have become very vocal on. And what I find is they're educating themselves on the issue, they're being involved. I think that's really important as constituents, that we're aware of what's happening and that we educate ourselves so that we can make the best decisions about what's right for our community.
Right, and for our families.
And for our families.
Yep.
And then there's the opioid crisis, which when I talk about healthy environments, I think it's also, a lot of these are kind of intermingled issues. They're very complicated and they reach a lot of different aspects. So, that reaches education too, but that we make sure, again, that we have these kind of access to resources, that we're educating our community.
Right.
So it's kind of the theme that you hear me kind of talking about, but I really think that's important. And it doesn't necessarily mean kind of bringing in this broad-based kind of financial solution. There's a lot of different ways to approach that. So,
well, I know that you also describe yourself as being a moderate and fiscally responsible. So I can't imagine that you're not thinking about how we use our funds in addition to how many funds we have.
Absolutely. Irrespective of the issue, it really does come down, a lot of what we're doing comes down to money and determining where and how much to spend on which issues. And I think sometimes we, as a government or legislative body, we think, well, we're going to put $50 million into fighting obesity. And then we kind of have that money over there, and maybe obesity isn't the problem anymore. We've addressed it, so we can kind of shift some of those funds out of that and kind of, again, looking towards the future and looking at where we need to spend the money, how we prioritize the funds.
Well, you've said that having a community and a state where hardworking families have chosen to raise their families, that sounds a little bit like your family to me.
Yeah.
How do you see private small businesses fitting into this idea of healthy families and people wanting to bring their families here?
I think there's a lot of great things about New Hampshire, and we talk a lot about the quality of life that we have in New Hampshire. If you're a small business owner, it's really great. We have we're very friendly to our businesses with our very low tax burden for business taxes. And so that allows businesses to either put more money back into their business or into their pockets. We don't have a sales tax, we don't have an income tax. And so these are all things that kind of help kind of keep the economy growing and thriving. We have great schools. We're consistently ranked at the top of the top across the country. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, yeah, you did. I'm just wondering, because this idea of small business in New Hampshire and how it relates to some of the proposed changes in either party, whether it's healthcare or minimum wage or taxation or whatever. I mean, you really see supporting small businesses as essential to attracting families to New Hampshire.
Absolutely. It is essential, and New Hampshire is a state of small businesses. Over 100,000 small businesses. We're not a Silicon Valley where we have the Amazons and these huge businesses. So I think small businesses is where it's at. We need to make sure our legislation is protecting them. We have a lot of concerns about raising minimum wage to a livable wage. That's a real thing. We have this net neutrality. We have this possible internet tax situation that's going to really burden our small businesses. So there's a lot of things we need to be looking at when we're legislating going forward that are going to affect our families.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit, Lisa, about the difference between District 41. I mentioned when I introduced you that we'd come back to this a little bit. District 41 and District 7 are both Bedford, New Hampshire.
Yes.
Talk to me how District 41 differs from District 7.
Well, this is a great question because I get this all the time.
I'm sure you do.
So in the New Hampshire legislature, you get a representative for approximately every 3,300 citizens in your district. In my district, District 41, Bedford and Amherst, because of their populations, are entitled to share one more legislator, so one more representative seat. So that's the seat that I'm running for, and Bedford has 6 seats in District 7.
Right.
And Amherst has 3 additional seats in District 22. And the question I get a lot is, is it a specific geographic area? It isn't. It's based on population. Every eligible voter in Amherst and Bedford can vote for District 41, and I encourage you to do so. Make sure you vote all the way down the ballot.
Yeah, I think that actually was a comment that I heard at the polls. As people were exiting, they were saying, I didn't know, I actually don't know which district I live in, 7 or 41. And the answer is that for voting purposes, we all live in both.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I did have a couple of people say, I saw your name on the ballot, but I couldn't vote for you because I don't live in District 41. And so just making sure that people understand that absolutely we all live in District 41.
I feel somewhat committed to clearing up that confusion because in conversations that I've had with people, as you well know, sometimes I've alluded to the fact that when people say, well, why do we share a district with Amherst? Where is this district? Yeah. And I've joked a little bit and said, if you go down to the end of Joppa Hill and look right, that's District 41.
Yeah.
But the reality is that everyone in Bedford votes for District 41. So I think it's important for people to look for that on the ballot as they're casting their vote in November.
Absolutely. And remembering that your state representatives are your local voices, I think it's really important because I think sometimes we get concerned on like the governor and these kind of bigger races.
Yeah.
I mean, those are very, very important, but your state representatives are the people in your community that are representing your voice. So
Well, and your state reps are the people that you're going to call.
you're going to call.
It's unlikely that you're going to have a conversation with the governor, but
Exactly.
it is very likely that you're going to be able to get a hold of your representative.
Exactly.
You have been running for this office in both Amherst and Bedford. So how's that going for you?
Oh my gosh, it's actually been a lot of fun. It's been really great, you know, doing all the parades and the old home days and just getting out there and meeting constituents and talking to them. I've found people in Bedford and Amherst to be very open and have discussions, which I know at different times, you know, sometimes people don't want to talk about politics,
Right,
and you know,
right.
there's a lot going on kind of nationwide that I think, you know, can get a lot of kind of energy
Tense,
and
right.
kind of tense energy.
Yep.
But I have found people to just be really great. They want to talk about what's on their minds. They have real concerns, and it's been a lot of fun. It's a little bit harder, you know, obviously in two towns.
Right.
You know, we have a lot of geographical land mass, so a lot of area to cover. But
Well, and your exposure really as a person has been in Bedford, not in Amherst.
absolutely, yeah.
I was actually surprised to find that Bedford, population-wise, is that much larger than Amherst.
It's a lot bigger. Well, and you can tell what they have 3 seats and we have 6, and
Right.
so if you do the math with about 3,200 plus, yeah,
Right.
It's a lot. Bedford has grown. I think a lot of that has to do with the building of the high school. You know, we have a lot of people moving to Bedford for our schools and our community. It's a great community. So,
On the campaign trail, have you had favorite experiences? Anything fun happen? Anything surprising happen?
marching in the Amherst parade was a real great experience. You know, it's different when you're on the side kind of watching the parade, but when you're in the parade, it's a completely different experience.
Right.
And I had my family with me, and so my daughter and I were walking together, and we were handing out necklaces, and just again, it's just that energy, that positive energy, people coming out supporting their activities in their community. That's the fun part for me, is going to the old home days and seeing all of the people come out and support their local businesses and
Right.
talk to their neighbors and just kind of be a cohesive community that works together and cares about each other.
Have you been knocking on doors?
I've been knocking on doors. Yes, I have.
What kind of reception are you getting?
One thing that I think is strange, and I think I'm going to Google it, is a lot of people don't have doorbells.
Really?
I've noticed.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's you know, like just a local thing around here or not. But yes, again, people have been just very open and receptive. And I think when you're the candidate, it makes a difference. You
Right.
know, if
Right.
somebody else knocks on your door and it's a college kid from, you know, New York or something, maybe the reception is a little bit different. But I again have just found people to really appreciate it. You know, appreciate coming, introducing yourself, talking to them, asking them about what's going on in their lives.
Does there seem to be any kind of a theme about what people are worried about? Is it
Yeah.
sort of
And you're a candidate,
issue specific?
yeah, you're a candidate yourself, so you're hearing a lot of it. But interestingly, well, the opioid crisis, which is not a surprise, opioid crisis, mental health, right kind of at the top, that's on everybody's minds.
Yeah.
I've had a number of people talk to me about immigration, which
Really?
I was kind of surprised at. But you know, we had issues in June at the border, so I think that was maybe it's more recent and it's on people's minds, but it's not something that you think of necessarily for New Hampshire, you know, as
Right.
kind of a big issue. But
Right.
that surprised me.
Yeah, I know myself that I've been surprised at the number of older folks that have been talking about Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. I mean, I think that regardless of what your position is on any of those issues, we all get older,
Right.
and insecurity, either in food or medical care or access to basic services, I think is something that's been on the mind of a lot of people.
That has been, and that also relates to the downshifting of the funding of public education onto property taxes. And I have had people say, well, the cost keeps going up, and I'm on a fixed income, and how
Right.
can I afford, my property taxes, and where am I going to go if I can't afford to pay my property taxes? So I do think that's something we need to revisit and address, because
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
a very real
And that's not an issue that's just affecting Bedford.
Oh.
Those property taxes
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since that's how we fund our schools.
I mean, in some respects, Bedford has been lucky because we've had enough of a business tax base
Right.
with all the development, particularly along South River Road, that has offset some of those property taxes. But we certainly know our colleagues in property poor towns that have been struggling to bring new business in.
Or go anywhere north of Concord
Right.
or west
Right.
of Concord. Yeah, it's real. It's real.
So we've only got a few weeks left before the election.
4 weeks.
How are you attacking the next month?
Well, I'm just the thing that I'm going to continue to do is keep knocking on those doors and getting out and meeting as many folks as possible. I have on Wednesday mornings, I go to the Black Forest Cafe at 9 o'clock, and I just invite anybody who wants to come by and say hello and just chat about anything, politics or otherwise, just to stop in.
I did not know that. I
Yeah.
might have joined you for a cup of
Well,
coffee
I'll be there
myself.
tomorrow,
All
so
right.
if you'd like to come in. Yes, and I'm going to a lot of events. There's a lot of great candidates. Something else that I've been doing, because I'm new to politics, this is my first time running for a position, is I'm trying to get out there and meet as many candidates on both sides who are running on both sides. Just to see what people are talking about, how it's going for them, what are their issues, what are they hearing, because we're all going to be working together. So I think it's just really important also to...
Have you been protecting any candidates from dogs?
Well, I do know one person
Don't
who's...
feel that you need to answer that.
I do know one candidate who does not really like dogs, big
Someone
or small.
who might be sitting in the room with
Somebody
you
who
at
might be
this
sitting in the
moment.
room, yeah.
I
love dogs.
Surprisingly, we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask you to think for just a second, and once you've composed your thoughts, I would love for you to look into this camera and tell our voters and viewers why they should check Lisa Nash in District 41 on November 6th.
Oh, excellent. Well, can I say thank you before I launch
Certainly.
into my final remarks? Thank you so much for hosting and being a friend and a support through this process.
You're quite welcome. It's been my
great.
pleasure.
It's been great going on the journey. And to anybody watching from Amherst and Bedford, I appreciate you taking out 25 minutes of your time to find out more about me. I hope that if you have any more questions, you reach out to me. I have a website, lisanashfornh.com. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. So to finish up, why you should vote for me. I think I'm a new voice. I'm a moderate voice. I'm an independent thinker. I really believe in engaging various stakeholders. Regardless of the issue, we need to be all working together. I'm committed to listening to my constituents, the individual constituents, regardless of party. It doesn't really matter to me. I want to bring your voice to Concord, and I hope that you vote for me on November 6th, or at least get out and vote, no matter who you're supporting.
Bedford High School.
Bedford High School,
From 7 to 7.
7 to 7, and Amherst, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So they have a little bit longer polling station in Amherst.
All right. Thanks so much, Lisa.
Thank you, Sue.